All right. We're talking about transitioning from in-person to online coaching. Geordie, who's filming, was just telling me about raves. I'm really unfamiliar with raves, and he was talking about some raves where you sit in a shipping container for 6 hours, and it sounds like the worst thing on earth. Anyway, what's not bad is making money online coaching. It's actually really fun. So I want to talk about transitioning from in-person to online and just some of the stuff that comes with it. I had a good mentoring call last week with a coach who's sort of going through this at the moment. One thing I recommend is that transitioning to online is great. If you are staying in the same local area, maintaining an in-person presence is good. It helps sharpen your sword. I know a lot of people who have transitioned completely to online who go through mental health problems because they all of a sudden exist in a world where they have very little human interaction. So it depends on your type of personality, what your end goal is with it, how you manage your own mental health, your time, all of that stuff. There's layers to all of that. More so what I want to talk about today, of course, is just like the actual mechanics behind the switch. And this is especially pertinent to coaches who do things like lead magnets of some sort, offers of some sort to hook people in and then sell them from there into coaching. And so where a lot of people struggle with the switch to online coaching is they just don't know how to do it. And it sounds crazy because you'd think it'd be relatively simple, but it isn't that simple. And where I think people go wrong the most with it is that they think it's different to in-person coaching. Now, there are definitely differences. Like there are some things you can do in person that you can't do online. Probably the biggest things that you miss between in-person and online. In person, you develop an intuition around how this person generally is, and you see a lot more of them in terms of, you know when they're having a bad day and they can't perform. You miss that with online unless you can ask the questions to identify that. You might just miss that whole part of the interaction. And people can create their own stories and then think you're not being empathetic as a result of not asking what's wrong when you didn't know something was wrong, et cetera, et cetera. You can also, on the fly with that, if someone's having a bad day and as a result their performance isn't great, you can guide them through and quickly change that on the fly. Online, you have to, of course, teach that. A very obvious thing that you miss between in-person and online coaching, in person, you can use tactile cueing. You can touch them. Online, you can't do that. Outside of those two things, most of the things that are differences between in-person and online coaching are just user management issues, as in the online coach just isn't doing them. You just have to ask for a lot more when you're an online coach. So when you're an online coach, you have to ask to see warm-ups if you want to see warm-ups. In person, you just see that. And so think of like how technique changes over time. If I'm coaching you in person, we're doing squats every week, I see your squats, and so I can see that change manifesting in your squat, slowly getting heavier over time because I see your warm-ups. If I only look at your top sets, there might not be change for months. And so as an online coach, if you're only looking at top sets, you might not see the change happening, and you might think they're not getting it, my coaching isn't working, the client might be feeling the same way. And so you have to ask for more information to connect the dots, to make sure that what you're doing is actually serving its purpose and moving forward. And there's tricks and tips to that, but that's not the point of this. What I really want to talk about is coming back to that whole lead magnet thing, transitioning that from in-person to online. So most personal trainers and coaches normally do something like, let's have a consultation, from there let's do a session, and they use that session as proof of concept. And that proof of concept, either by virtue of how good it is, sells the person into ongoing coaching, or they use it as a sales consultant, an opportunity to consult for sales at the end of that free in-person session. And the mentoring call that I had the other week was basically along the lines of, how do I do that online? And I was like, okay, well, what are you doing at the moment? And they didn't have much of an answer. And I'm like, well, you already know how to turn this into a sale. You already know what to do. Think about what happens in person. You bring them in, you identify a problem, and then you show them the solution to that problem, and in doing so, potentially identify more problems that they need the solution for, which turns into ongoing coaching. So they come in, you're like, oh, you're squatting like this, you should be squatting like that. Here's the solution to that. They're like, wow, now my squat feels great. And you're like, and in order to continue to build upon this, you need to follow this program, you need to train like this. They're like, okay, there's that problem, I need to buy the solution from you. That's all sales is. It's just like identify a problem, or that's all this whole idea of a lead magnet or a hook is. It's identify the problem, show them the solution, and show them that you are able to provide the solution. So just do that online. It's like, okay, have a consultation, be like, cool. Normally what I do is go through your squat, bench, deadlift. We can't do that in person. Send me videos. And then you make a video back of like, here's what we're going to change. And in order to continue this progress, you're going to need to train like this. And we can do that through this online coaching package that I offer. So it's really just taking what you already do in person and do it online. And I know that sounds like blindingly simple, but you'd be stunned by how many coaches really struggle to do this. Even the ones listening to this being like, oh, I don't have a problem with that. Guarantee there's some aspect of your online coaching that you could be doing better just by asking for stuff. Oh, this person's really not getting the concept of setting their upper back when they bench press. Are you really going into the weeds of like, show me your rows and lat pull downs every week? Show me all these little drills I'm giving you for your shoulders every week. Are you really going that in depth on that sort of stuff? Are you really collecting all the data that you could be collecting? If you're not, do it. And it's easy to get really stale and complacent with this sort of stuff, especially when you see the person lifting week after week after week. It's a bit of a skill to be able to see someone's movement or see someone's lifting and treat it like it's the first time you've ever seen it. Like really treat it as in you're trying to solve this problem for the first time. And of course, I mean, you can't completely approach coaching like that. Otherwise, you're going to sound funny. It's like use the data that you know about this problem and this person, but definitely look at it without complacency. That's the hard part. It's easy to get stale with online coaching. You miss a lot of the general communication that you get with in-person coaching. That's another major difference. There's no chit chat. Think about an in-person coaching session. You spend an hour with them. You're not coaching them for an hour. Of that whole hour session, you might coach them for like 5 minutes. The other 55 minutes is lifting and talking shit. You don't do that online. You just write a novel of feedback or send them a Loom video explaining, this is what I want you to do. There's no back and forth, or there's less back and forth. Of course, unless you build it in, unless you do regular like Zoom calls or whatever you do with your clients. And even then, even if you do online face-to-face catch-ups with video calls, it's still not the same as seeing someone in person. There's still that difference. And so again, my message to this, to you through this is not to teach you how to be the best online coach possible. I'd love to do that, and I'm happy to talk more about it because I love online coaching. But it's more about, okay, here's a difference, and here's how you can start to manage that. And the general principle is anything you do online, for the most part, anything you do in person, for the most part, you can do online. Besides the absolute physicality of it, most of the things that you do in person, you can do online as well. Hope that helps. And sorry for continuing to look at that thing instead of the lens.